Today, I'm going to show you how you can move from completion handlers to async await. Now, if you like these types of tutorials or you want to meet me on a one-on-one Zoom call where we can learn more about SwiftUI related stuff, or you want me to debug your code, go ahead and check out rebeloper.com and I will see you on a Zoom call there. Okay, so what I have done is just started a brand new Xcode project. And let's just say there is a model inside our project, and that would be a struct called profile. There we go. It would just have a name, just a simple one, so we can just use it as placeholder. Okay, so we just have this profile. By the way, let's have a little bit more space. There we go. So here is our profile. And then we would just have, kind of an old API with completion handlers. And then you are going to move away from that to the asynchronous way of doing things. But for now, let's just create that kind of old API that you might have if you are dealing with older code. So let's just create our struct called old API. And let's have a static function called fetch profiles. Fetch profiles. And here's our function. Now, when we are fetching our profiles, it will just return them from the server, which will take some time. So previously to Swift concurrency, what we did is just use completion handlers. So let's build out one right over here. Right over here in the declaration of our function, we are just going to say completion. There we go. And we are going to add in here a completion. This is basically a completion. It could be like this void in older versions, but I would prefer this one. Now, what are we actually returning? Well, an array of profiles. So let's just add in here profile. There we go. And this will be completing with an array of profiles. It could be an empty array profile, or it could be a non-empty array of profile, which is fine. So let's just create some profiles. So let profile 1 equals profile with the name of Ada. And then let's duplicate this profile 2 of Bob, whatever. Okay. And now we are just going to return an array of those two, profile 1 and profile 2. I know this is instant, but let's just see. Oh, we're not returning. Again, the second nature, now that I'm using asynchronous functionality, now this will not return because we are expecting a completion. It's not like this one. Good thing that I made this kind of silly mistake. It's not doing this one. So now it is going to be fine because we are returning a profile, but we are no longer using the completion. And again, this will just work fine right now because we are declaring the profile 1 and 2 instantly, and it's just going to return. But what if some time passes? Let's simulate that. I'm going to remove this one and also the return. Again, this is fine because now you know that, okay, you should not return. You should wait for the completion to complete. So now we're just going to use a dispatch queue .main .async after a deadline. Let's just have .now plus, and let's just have just 2 seconds. And we are going to execute. Okay, auto completion is not working, but it's going to be just like this. And then we are going to use this completion to complete with these two profiles. So first of all, let's create the array. So let profiles. And by the way, we could just do that outside right over here. Profiles equals profile 1 and profile 2. Just think of it like these lines would be done on the server. Okay, now after 2 seconds, we get back our information from the server. We are going to say, okay, completion, and it's expecting an array of profiles, which the profiles variable, a constant, is right over here. Okay, so now we have an error right over here. Escaping closure captures non-escaping parameter completion, which means that this line of code is escaping and this completion is non-escaping. So what we want to do is just add escaping just right over there. And that will fix our error. Okay, so that is our old API. How would we actually work with it? Well, let's just create a function right over here of fetch profiles. Again, this is on the view. It's very different from the one from the old API. And maybe let's just have a state private var profiles of type profile, and default would be an empty array. I'm not going to add it into a list. It's just fine. We're just talking about how to move from completion to async await. Currently, we would just go ahead and call old API dot fetch profiles, and as you can see, we are going to get a completion. We just going to return, and we are going to have an array of profiles. So profiles, and then after we do get a profiles inside our closure right over here after the completion, we're going to say, okay, we got our profiles. So now self.profiles, which is the state variable, equals profiles. And that's fine. That's how we are going to get it. And let's just go ahead and print it out. Yeah, I'm not going to test it anyway. It's just going to take too much time for this tutorial. But anyway, this is how we are going to fetch it. It's just going to populate our state variable, which is okay, but it uses the old way of doing things with the completions. And the purpose of this tutorial is just to move away. Now, why did I talk quite a lot about the old way of doing things with the completions? So you better understand how things work. Now, one other note right over here. What if I'm not going to get back, let's say we're going to get back an empty array? Well, we could just go through the view logic over here. If it's an empty, then we're going to present an empty state of the view. But what if I'm going to get an error? And this fetch profiles with a completion is not handling that. So therefore, we should not use actually an array of whatever we'd like. We should use a result type. And I'm going to go through the result type and why it's so powerful in my next video. But for now, let's just replace our array with a result type. It is going to need the type that we are expecting and an error. The error is always going to be an error. It needs to be an error. And we can propagate the error back. So now, if let's say after 2 seconds, we say completion and add a open brackets, open parentheses, we could just go and move that error with a dot, failure, and whatever error might come from our servers. Of course, currently we do have an array of profiles, so we're not going to use the failure one. We are going to use the one of success. And as you can see, it's asking us for that array of profiles, which is fine. Profiles. Okay, that's one part of our functionality. Next comes right over here. Now we are not getting back an array of profiles. We are getting back a result, which is really, really nice because now with the result, I can switch through its 2 cases, the failure and the success, or rather the success or failure. So I'm just going to go and add switch result, and I'm going to use the auto-completion from Xcode. So we're going to have either success or failure. And right over here, we're going to have profiles. I'm just going to change that. And the same thing, self.profiles equals profiles. And what about a failure? Well, we're going to get back a failure, an error basically. Currently, I'm just going to print out the failure. Let's just change that also, error. The error's localized description. So error dot localized description. Of course, you might want to show this inside an alert. Now, this is much, much nicer. Again, a lot of extra code, but this is how things work. Now, let's take this to the next step. Let's actually make the promise of this tutorial. So from completion to async await. We don't want these nested things right over here just to grab our profiles and of course handle the errors. We are going to do a little bit better. So how will we do that? Well, we are going to grab our functions with the completion and we're going to transform it into async await. So how will you do that? I'm going to create a new struct API. So, or you can just call it new API or whatever. API is just fine for now. And I'm just going to grab the whole title, you know, the description of the actual function that I want to create. And now we are going to move things around. So what we are expecting is an array of profiles. So I'm just going to copy it out. And again, I'm just going to remove the whole completion. We no longer need that. And it should return an array of profiles. And remember the mistake that I made previously, just a few minutes ago, it's not actually going to work because we actually need to wait a little bit for the server to respond. So this return should be instant, which is not. So therefore, this should be async. There we go. This is much nicer. It's going to be async. Great. But also, what about this error? Well, it should also throw an error if that is the case. So async throws. So this is going to be a function that is asynchronous and throws an error, and it is going to return a profile array, an array of profiles. So okay, so we don't want the whole new functionality set up all over again because, you know, this fetch profile maybe, I'm going to use the one with the completion. But for that, we need to use an intermediary function, and that is called with, and in our case, it's throwing, checked throwing continuation. There is also with unsafe throwing continuation. I wouldn't go for that. Or there is one with checked continuation if you don't care about errors, which you should, by the way. So we are going to use this one with checked throwing continuation. Okay, let's hit return 2 times. So that was the first one, that's the second one. And right over here, we're going to get back a continuation. There we go. And because this is an asynchronous throwing function, we are going to try await. Okay, that's fine. Now that warning just went, that error just went away. Great. So what are we going to do right over here? Well, actually, we are going to call our function with a completion. So we are going to say old API dot fetch profiles. Again, it's just going to autocomplete with a completion. We are going to get back that result, right? And then instead of, switching through the result, well, actually, we could do the switching through. Let me just show you, but there's a better way. But for now, let's just go switch through the result. We're going to get back a success, a failure. Again, I'm not going to change the success failure because it doesn't really matter in terms of reading how you are reading it currently. So right over here, when we're going to get a success, we will say continuation and then dot resume. Now we are going to return that array of, profiles, the success, returning success. And on the failure part, we're going to say continuation dot resume throwing with that error, that failure. And basically that's it. But again, this is just going through the switch and result, and there's an easier way of doing things. Now you know what the result does. So I'm just going to go and say continuation dot resume, and there is this with, not throwing, not returning, with. And as you can see, it already auto-completes with that result of profile and error. And that's going to go resume with result. And that's it. That's how you would just change from completion handlers to async await. Now let's use it. So now let me just comment this out so you can see it as a perspective. And we are going to need to be inside an asynchronous environment. So we are going to add a task. And we also want to catch our errors, if any. So we are going to have a do catch. Do catch, there we go. And again, I'm going to print out our errors localized description. Let me copy and paste that over there. So now it's just a one-liner. So you just say self, I don't know if self is also needed, just profiles. Yeah, that's the state variable. Profiles equals try await, because it's asynchronous throwing function API. Oh, sorry. There we go. API dot fetch profiles. And that's it. Just one line of code, and it's as simple as that. No more completion handlers right over here, making sure that we switch through the results. Even worse, if we are not using results, this is as simple as it gets. Now, if you are still stuck with results, which in some cases you are, go ahead and check out my next video where we will talk all about results and how powerful they are outside of asynchronous environments. But nonetheless, it's really, really important for you to understand them and to know them. And if you like these types of tutorial, go ahead and check out rebeloper.com, where you can meet me on a one-on-one Zoom call. We can talk about all of this, about Swift, about SwiftUI, iOS development in general. I will see you there.